Going forward, no one is opposed to purchase the dais. Chair, we're ready to begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our hearing today. Welcome to the fiscal 2027 preliminary budget hearing for the Committee on Oversight and Investigations. I'm Councilmember Shekhar Krishnan, Chair of the Committee on Oversight and Investigations, and today we will review the Department of Investigations, or DOI's, fiscal 2027 preliminary budget to understand the changes in the department's budget and how it addresses the needs of the department and improves the way that New York City operates. I see this committee and its partnership with DOI to be a powerful tool in rooting out corruption and a way to hold anyone or anything accountable that takes advantage of New Yorkers. From taking on bad landlords to greedy corporations, to ensuring city agencies are fulfilling their mission, to ensuring the corruption we saw over the last 4 years in City Hall never happens again. These are the tasks in front of us and with this committee. Together, we are working to restore trust in our government and prove to New Yorkers that our city fights for you and works for you. Over the Eric Adams administration, we saw troubling amounts of corruption and misuse of city resources. The Department of DOIs and FBIs and the other federal investigations into his administration resulted in 20 individuals with links to City Hall, including former Mayor Adams himself, being charged with bribery, conspiracy, and fraud. All while Mayor Adams was slashing the budget for the Department of Investigations at the same time, a budget whose purpose is to bring oversight to city government and hold bad actors accountable. Former Mayor Adams cut the workforce of DOI by 28%, deeply limiting the department's ability to properly and comprehensively oversee city agencies and root out corruption. With the new era in City Hall, we are hoping to turn a page on this corruption and restore some of these budget actions in the coming plans. We must allow this department the resources it needs to provide comprehensive oversight of previous and current programs. I look forward to hearing about your budget requests from DOI and continuing our fruitful conversations with ongoing oversight hearings. But I know that we have a lot of work ahead of us. I look forward to hearing about the impact we can have together in rooting out corruption, waste, and fraud for New Yorkers. I also want to thank our Oversight and Investigations Committee staff for their hard work, our financial analysts, Owen Katowski, policy analysts Erica Cohen and Alex Yablon, Committee Counsel Nicole Kata, and the incredible Oversight Investigations Division. I also want to thank Jack Story and all of our Isha Wright and everyone from our finance staff as well who have worked with us to prepare us for today's hearing. And of course, I want to thank my staff, Chanel Martinez, Hunter de Vinagracia, and Victoria Opperman for all their hard work leading up to today. And when our colleagues join, we will recognize them too. And I'd like to welcome now Acting Commissioner Christopher Ryan and his leadership team. I'm now going to pass it back to our committee counsel for a few procedural items.
Thank you very much, Chair. We will now hear testimony from the administration. We will hear from DOI Acting Commissioner Chris Ryan. Before we begin, I will administer the affirmation. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Krishnan and members of the Committee on Oversight and Investigations. My name is Christopher Ryan, and I'm the Acting Commissioner of the Department of Investigation. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today about DOI's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2027. My testimony will focus on DOI's work over the past year, our preliminary budget and staffing, and our new needs requests that have been submitted to the Office of Management and Budget, and which are critical for DOI's continued operations. I will also outline the difficult cuts that we have been asked to implement for the executive budget. Before I begin, I would like to provide some brief but important background to give you a better understanding of how we operate and conduct investigations. DOI is a unique oversight agency established more than 153 years ago to combat corruption, fraud, waste, and mismanagement in New York City government. The city charter establishes our jurisdiction and grants DOI the authority to make any study or investigation which, in the opinion of the commissioner, may be in the best interest of the city. The mayor and the New York City Council also may direct the DOI commissioner to conduct investigations. Over the years, mayors have strengthened DOI's authority through several mayoral executive orders, most notably in the late 1970s through the mid-1980s. Those executive orders give DOI the authority to access most city records, emails, and other documents without a subpoena, and to compel interviews of city employees and vendors. The executive orders also mandate that all city employees who become aware of suspected corruption or fraud must report it directly and promptly to DOI or risk discipline. DOI has the power to subpoena third parties, non-city employees, for documents and for testimony, which DOI is authorized to take under oath. A mayoral executive order in the mid-1980s reorganized DOI to its current structure, with inspectors general reporting to the DOI commissioner. This shift removed mayoral agency oversight of inspectors general and provided DOI with an important measure of independence, establishing DOI as the city agency responsible for combating city-related corruption. DOI's investigations and factual findings can lead to criminal prosecutions, disciplinary proceedings, and other administrative actions. Our staff has deep knowledge of government operations and its complexities, and the many ways that corruption can creep into city government, thereby undermining access to city services and siphoning precious public funds. Based on our investigations, DOI makes recommendations for policy and procedural reforms to city agencies to address corruption vulnerabilities and prevent misconduct from reoccurring. DOI also issues public reports that have significant impact in New York City. These public reports discuss DOI's factual findings and our reasoning for the recommendations that we issue. In addition to criminal and disciplinary investigations, DOI investigates potential conflicts of interest that may result in referrals to Conflicts of Interest Board, as well as claims of retaliation against employees of agencies and city contractors who report misconduct and are protected by the city's whistleblower law. DOI also provides other critical services to the city, including background investigations for certain city employees, vendor name checks for city-funded vendors, and integrity monitoring services for large city projects, and to rehabilitate needed vendors with integrity concerns. DOI's work saves the city money by preventing fraud, identifying waste, and receiving millions of dollars in asset forfeiture and restitution funds that are collected as a result of some of our investigations. DOI's investigations in calendar year 2025 have covered a broad range of areas, from strengthening the safety of young people in the city's care, protecting public funds, and tackling crimes that compromise New Yorkers' access to essential needs such as housing and wages. DOI issued 14 public reports and saved more than $5 million for the city through DOI's monitorship of the asylum seeker contracts. In addition, DOI investigations led to the collection of more than $6 million in financial recoveries to the city. DOI made 174 arrests, fielded nearly 13,000 complaints, provided corruption prevention training to more than 37,000 city employees and others through our digital learning module, webinars, and in-person lectures, and issued 113 policy and procedure recommendations to improve city operations and best practices. These are only some of the agency's accomplishments. The full list is cataloged in our year-end report, which was issued last month and is attached to your testimony. I want to take a moment to recognize the hardworking and dedicated staff at DOI who made these accomplishments happen through their deep commitment to DOI's mission and to New Yorkers. Their work is even more noteworthy when we recognize that it was achieved while simultaneously conducting numerous high-profile, labor-intensive investigations focused on a number of high-level city officials. Those investigations required a significant number of staff and resources, all while we faced continuous budget cuts and hiring and retention challenges. I'd like to highlight some of the criminal cases that DOI worked on in 2025. They included the indictment of former Mayor Adams' chief advisor and 8 other co-defendants in an alleged federal bribery conspiracy case. State bribery conspiracy case. The conviction on bribery, fraud, or extortion offenses of all 70 employees of the New York City Housing Authority, charged in a February 2024 sweep that touched almost 1/3 of NYCHA's 365 developments in each of the 5 boroughs. The sentencing of 2 former chiefs in the fire department to prison terms for providing expedited plan reviews and priority inspections in return for bribes. The guilty pleas of principals of a fire alarm maintenance company and their sentencing to prison time for a decades-long scheme to defraud multiple city agencies by overbilling those agencies using fabricated invoices with fraudulently inflated prices and shell companies. The charging of youth development specialists with the City Administration for Children's Services with bringing in contraband to a juvenile center in Brooklyn, and separately, the sentencing of 4 former ACS youth development specialists for participating in contraband smuggling. The indictment of landlords on charges of allegedly harassing 2 older rent-regulated tenants in Chelsea, resulting in these tenants frequently living without heat for extended periods each winter and other dangerous conditions. 2 separate wage theft cases that resulted in guilty pleas and the return of stolen wages to victimized workers. The sentencing of a former fraud investigator with the Department of Homeless Services and another individual to prison for stealing homeless victims' identities to apply for unemployment benefits. The sentencing of a former employee with the New York City Employees Retirement System to 1 to 3 years in prison for stealing pension checks valued at $624,000 from 2 retirees. An array of contraband smuggling investigations on Rikers Island that resulted in charges and in some cases convictions of corrections officers for their role in these crimes, and guilty pleas by a construction safety training school and its president for issuing certificates to workers without providing the required safety training. The company lost its security license, and the president was sentenced to 1 year in jail, 100 hours of community service, and was ordered to forfeit $100,000. A total of 22 defendants associated with this case have pleaded guilty or been found guilty after trial. DOI's work goes beyond its criminal cases. In 2025, DOI established the Protest Response Oversight Unit, which is overseeing the New York City Police Department's response to certain protests, as agreed to in the city's settlement of a lawsuit over the policing during the summer of 2022 demonstrations during that summer. The work of that unit is already underway, and it is currently reviewing 2 protests selected by the plaintiffs: the protest at Brooklyn College in May 2025 and the protest at 26 Federal Plaza in June 2025. This past year, DOI restructured the Office of the Inspector General for the NYPD and filled positions that had remained vacant for too long. I'm pleased to share with this committee that in 2025, DOI hired 9 new staff members for this unit, and it currently operates with an active headcount of 10. The budget provides sufficient funding for only 2 of the 5 open positions in this unit, and DOI plans to hire for an additional Assistant Inspector General position and the Inspector General position, which we hope to fill once the new DOI Commissioner arrives. The unit will soon issue 2 reports that are mandated by the Council: its annual report and the 4th annual report regarding NYPD's compliance with the Public Oversight of Surveillance Technology, known as the POST Act, that will focus on the NYPD's use of facial recognition technology. These 2 reports join the 13 reports that the unit has produced since January 2022, despite the serious staffing challenges it faced during that time. DOI has been actively working to amend state law that currently precludes DOI from being able to meaningfully exercise independent oversight over ACS's handling of child abuse and neglect investigations or its operation of the city's juvenile detention facilities. DOI thanks Assemblymember Andrew Hevesy and Senator Jabari Brisport for their attention to this critical issue and for carrying the legislation forward. And DOI has completed and closed all pending background investigations that were part of a nearly 6,500 case backlog identified in 2019, thereby completely eliminating that backlog. Let me turn to DOI's fiscal year 27 preliminary budget, which is $54.1 million. The total is comprised of $30.5 million for personal services and $23.6 million for other than personal services, which is largely made up of non-discretionary expenditures, such as our rental obligation and integrity monitorships. At the start of fiscal year 27, as it has in previous years, DOI anticipates receiving an additional $1.7 million in intracity funds from other agencies that support a portion of our staffing. The total fiscal year 27 budget will support an anticipated 451 employees, 309 funded through DOI's budget and memoranda of understanding arrangements. The remaining 142 staff represent employees directly funded by other city agencies and public authorities, including NYCHA and New York City Health and Hospitals. DOI has also made significant progress in reducing our vacancy rate, which is the lowest it has been in recent years, because we have ensured that open funded positions are immediately posted and that identifying potential candidates occurs swiftly. Currently, DOI has an 11% vacancy rate for its budgeted headcount, significantly lower than in fiscal year 24, when our vacancy rate was about 17%. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight how DOI's capacity has been reduced over the past 5 fiscal years, particularly relative to the size of the city's workforce and the city's budget, with which we remain tasked with overseeing. Just 6 fiscal years ago, in fiscal year 2021, DOI's preliminary budget was $58.2 million. This year, DOI's preliminary budget is only $54.1 million, even as both salaries and expenses have continued to rise. In fiscal year 2021, DOI had an active headcount of 525 staff, including both DOI-funded and on-loan employees. This year, DOI has an active headcount of just 417. As of today, there are 108 fewer DOI professionals conducting oversight of the city and its vendors, even as the city's budgeted workforce has remained largely relatively stable, and the preliminary budget has increased from $95.3 billion to $127 billion over the same period. Former Commissioner Jocelyn Strauber repeatedly testified over the past few years about the strain that these cuts have put on our agency and our existing staff to the detriment of the city, and I reiterate that point today. For the fiscal year 27 executive budget, the Office of Management and Budget proposed an OTPS PEG of $664,000 in fiscal year 26 and $1.1 million in fiscal year 27 and the out years. An OTPS PEG of this size is not reasonable for DOI. DOI's city tax levy funds OTPS budget totals $23.1 million in 26 and $23.6 million in fiscal year 27. That funding pays for DOI's $18.5 million rental obligation and $4.4 million for 2 integrity monitorships. These are non-discretionary expenses that DOI has no ability to reduce. That leaves only approximately $200,000 in discretionary OTPS funding that could be used to satisfy the PEG. DOI has requested repeatedly that its non-discretionary OTPS funding be exempted from the PEG, but this request has not yet been approved. OMB is also proposing a PS PEG in the form of 50% vacancy reduction in fiscal year 26 and beyond, and a one-time PS reduction of $478,000 in fiscal year 26. This would reduce DOI's budgeted headcount by 13 lines and at a time when we all are already struggling with insufficient headcount. DOI has similarly requested an exemption from the PS PEG, but to date, that request has not been approved. In discretionary OTPS funding that I just referenced, DOI's entire city tax levy funded budget goes to support staff salaries, rent, and contracted integrity monitorships for 2 citywide projects. In advance of the release of the fiscal year 27 preliminary budget, DOI submitted a new needs request to OMB. Only one of our requests was funded in the budget, namely $600,000 for DOI's lease obligations. Let me outline some of our high priority requests which remain unfunded. In July 2025, the city passed resolution number 560-A, directing DOI to ascertain the knowledge mayoral administrations had about environmental toxins produced by the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, and to support a report to the Council by July 2027. As the Council was considering this resolution, DOI explained that given the volume and scope of such an examination, DOI would need funding to hire a team of investigators, attorneys, and experts to properly conduct the investigation. To that end, DOI has requested $3 million in funding in FY27 to hire an outside firm with the essential expertise that DOI will manage. Based on the responses we received to our request for information, DOI now estimates that the cost of the overall investigation will total between $4 and $5 million, and we will be submitting a revised request to OMB. DOI requested $1.1 million in new baseline PS funding to support 17 additional headcount. The new headcount is needed to allow DOI to add specialized staff to its ranks, specifically auditors, data analysts, and background investigators. This funding also includes the hiring of 7 entry-level investigators to better support our current investigative squads, and $130,000 to hire 2 operational support staff in our procurement and budget offices. DOI has worked hard to recruit and retain its staff, particularly during the budgetary cuts over recent fiscal years, in which the city's 2-for-1 hiring freeze created a severe burden on the staff. To accomplish this critical staffing effort, DOI leveraged existing vacancy funding to revise the salary structure for our investigative titles, which experienced some of the highest attrition rates in the agency's recent history, and which established a viable path for young investigators who desired promotional opportunities within the agency. As a result, 14 positions were defunded, and DOI has requested that those positions, totaling $1.4 million, be restored. DOI has requested a little over $1 million to cover ongoing maintenance and technical support that has increased significantly from fiscal year 2024, and to continue the process of updating and replacing aging technology. In past years, DOI has leveraged state and federal asset forfeiture to supplement our needs in this area, but at the current rate of spending, forfeiture reserves are projected to be depleted by fiscal year 28. Let me provide some background on how we receive forfeiture funding and the legal rules for using it. Forfeiture funding is intended to supplement DOI's resources and expand its investigative capacities, not to pay for ordinary expenditures that should be appropriately funded by the city. DOI receives forfeiture from its criminal investigations. Both federal and state laws provide for the seizure of assets that are connected to criminal activity and the subsequent sharing of those funds with the investigative agencies responsible for the investigations. Forfeiture funds must be used to support legitimate law enforcement activities. The majority of our forfeiture funds come from federal prosecutions, and there are very strict Department of Justice guidelines on how forfeiture funds can be used and for what purposes. The DOJ guidelines require that forfeiture funds supplement, not supplant, DOI budget. This means that the city cannot reduce DOI's budget due to the ability of forfeiture funds. Investigations do not always result in forfeiture funding to DOI, and there is no way to predict how much forfeiture DOI will receive in any given year. I want to take a moment to say that it has been an honor to serve as DOI's acting commissioner. And while that honor sits with me, I want to certainly note the DOI staff here. We have held the fort down, I think, admirably as a team over the course of the last several weeks. And everyone at DOI is looking forward to the arrival of our new commissioner, under whose leadership we will continue to provide the independent oversight that has been the hallmark of DOI's work as New York City's Inspector General. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, for your testimony. I want to recognize that we've been joined by our Finance Chair and Committee Member, Councilmember Linda Lee, and also Councilmember Sandra Ung. First, before getting started, Commissioner, I want to thank you for all your service to our city, the work that you've done. I've been aware of your work over these years too, even as the first deputy commissioner as well, and now as the acting commissioner of this agency too. It's very much appreciated. These are very turbulent times, and DOI played a leading role in ensuring that the city rooted out corruption and moved forward. And on a personal note, you knew me 20 years ago when I was a first-year law school intern in the Manhattan DA's office. So it's been an honor to, at least for the last couple hearings, be in this role together years later. It comes full circle. So thank you for all your service to this city, and best wishes on your next endeavor as well.
Thank you.
I want to get started by, you gave a lot of information here, just about the state of the budget and where we are right now. But I want to zoom out for a minute and just highlight a few key things that you mentioned. In fiscal year 2025, the department received 14,435 complaints, which led to 1,515 active investigations and 782 referrals for civil and administrative action and criminal prosecution. Does those numbers sound correct to you in terms of the work and scale of complaints and investigations you all did?
Yes.
And you also mentioned, I think in the beginning of your testimony too, the amount of work that DOI had done on criminal cases, from the indictment of former Mayor Adams as chief advisor and 8 other co-defendants, 70 employees at NYCHA, ACS, FDNY, various levels of fraud, and other landlords that were indicted for harassing rent-regulated tenants, just to name a few. Is that a correct summary of all the work that you had done?
It was a sampling of the work we have done. It goes obviously well beyond that, but those are matters that we thought we would highlight.
And in this year's preliminary budget, the current proposal is, despite all of that work, $54 million in this preliminary budget, right?
Correct.
And as you mentioned, that is going back for the last 5 years, a $4 million decline in the budget, if I had that right, in the preliminary budget for DOI as well. Is that right?
Correct.
And about 5 years ago, you all had a staff of 525, and now you all have a staff of 417, which, as you mentioned, 108 fewer staff doing oversight over the last 5 years. Is that right?
Correct.
And that is despite the fact that expenses and salaries have risen, and even more so despite the fact that the city budget workforce has remained stable, and in fact the budget has gone up from $95 billion to $127 billion. Is that right?
Correct.
So budget's gone up, workforce has remained stable, yet during that time, DOI's resources and budget have drastically been reduced. Is that right?
Correct.
And that is also during a time where you all were not only doing a number of different investigations and complaints, but where you all were investigating and bringing forward and recommending for charges criminal activity occurring at the highest levels of City Hall. Is that correct?
Correct.
Which ultimately led to a change in leadership at City Hall as well, and a number of federal and state indictments that came out as a result of that work too from DOI. Is that right?
Yes.
So that is really what stuns me today. Commissioner, do you believe that an agency with a mission as important as the Department of Investigation to root out corruption at every level of government, do you believe that the budget of an agency like that should be subject to the whims of City Hall, to the whims of and the results of investigations that you all undertake? Do you believe that that should have any bearing on the budget you all receive as DOI?
No. I believe it was last year DOI worked with and certainly made a proposal in the charter revision process to come up with a way to prevent exactly what you're describing. And what we proposed was pegging DOI's budget as a percentage of the city budget, to remove even the appearance that that an administration would be intentionally defunding the oversight agency. And so if DOI's budget was pegged in a particular way, and I think we recommended a percentage of the city budget at 0.06%. If the budget rose, so would DOI's budget. If the budget was reduced, so would ours. But it would remove any ability or even the appearance that our budget was being manipulated for in order to reduce the ability of the agency to conduct oversight. We had made that proposal. It's a certainly sound. It is a sound methodology that is used by other cities, and we talked to some of our colleagues, excuse me, in other cities who operated under that same regimen, and so we made that recommendation last year.
So you all proposed, as part of the Charter Revision Commission, funding and basing the funding of the important agency and this agency's important work based on a percentage of the city budget.
Correct.
And that was done to protect the independence of the Department of Investigations, right?
Correct.
And that independence is a critical element of DOI's work because you are examining and investigating corruption at every level of city government, from any city employee to the top of City Hall. Is that correct?
Yes.
What happened to that proposal that you all had put forward?
Yeah. So it's our understanding that our proposal is within one of the two kind of competing charter revision sets of proposals that stand now. Whether or not ours will be adopted, I don't think we know that.
Mm-hmm. So a proposal as important as this has been, so to speak, lost in the sauce of the dueling charter revision commissions, one put forth by former Mayor Adams. Is that right?
Correct.
You know, what really stuns me about this is, given the importance of DOI's mission and mandate, given the crucial role that DOI played in the investigation and federal charges that ultimately led to the indictment of former Mayor Adams, given the importance of DOI's independence to do that work, to see the budget slashed over these years, to see the staffing slashed over these years, is just shocking. And it raises serious questions in my mind about the hollowing out of this agency by a prior administration that themselves were the subject of sprawling federal and state investigations that DOI was a part of. I don't believe any agency should be subject to the whims of politics that way, but an agency with such an important independent mandate like DOI's, to see it subjected to political games the way that it has been the last 4 years, is frankly part of the problem and part of what we need to address moving forward with this new administration and with this new era in city government. My question is, to what extent to the extent you can reveal, what were the conversations like with the Department of Investigations and the prior administration when it came to funding for DOI, whether it's with OMB or the mayor's office? How did those conversations go when it came to hiring, budget modifications, or interagency coordination? I'm sure I was there for your testimony for prior budget hearings. To the extent you can disclose, what were the outcomes of those discussions with City Hall? Where did they go? We know what happened in the budget itself and the resources you got and didn't get, but was DOI making its case to City Hall as to the importance of these resources?
Unquestionably, DOI was repeatedly at every opportunity making its case with the prior administration, particularly through OMB and through City Hall. All the proposals, everything that was included in my testimony today, the facts, the figures, the downward trend, we made our case at every opportunity that we had with the last administration.
And what was the reaction that you received?
The request, we had some positive responses on particularized requests, but generally speaking, the largest ticket items that we had requested that would really have the most significant structural impact on the agency in terms of hiring and salary and retention were not acted on by the administration, and we were repeatedly subject to pegs and reductions and the cost cutting that puts us in the position we are in now.
Which is shocking to me, because we have not seen, since the days of Tammany Hall, the level of corruption we saw at City Hall over the last 4 years. And you all are tasked with investigating and rooting out that corruption, which you did very commendably. Do you all feel that when the budgets get cut this way, when you see such a reduction in staffing and a $4 million decline in your budget over the last 4 years, does that hamper your ability to conduct the anti-corruption and other investigations that you all do at the Department of Investigation?
As I said in my testimony, it certainly has negatively impacted our ability to do everything that we want to do. I will say that DOI, the staff at DOI, is committed to this mission and has there are things that we would want to do, but that we have been, they are reduced in our ability to do so. However, we continue to do day to day the important work and make do with what we can. So the mission is there. The staff is dedicated to the work. It would be, but I wouldn't. It would be disingenuous to say that it has not impacted our day-to-day ability to do the work, which just simply causes us to triage, I think, more and to decide, where can we dedicate the scarce resources that we have to deliver, the most meaningful impact for the city. So it certainly is a balancing act and a prioritization, which I think we've been very effective in doing. We certainly needed to do the large-scale, labor-intensive, high-profile cases last year. I think the city needed us to do that. And while keeping the day-to-day work going, it was asking a lot of staff. Staff were asked to do a lot more with a lot less, and a lot fewer of them. It has been a challenge, but the staff is admirably dedicated to the work that we do.
Which, as you pointed out at the end, and that's the key, you all have done a lot more with a lot less, and very commendably so, may I add. But it is very surprising to see that this preliminary budget only proposes $54 million for an agency with such a broad and critical mandate across the city. I have a few more questions, and I'm going to turn it over to our finance chair to ask some questions as well. My first question is, since the start of the Adams administration, the department's budgeted headcount has been reduced by 28%, and we know the impact that has, and you testified to it as well. Can you point to a time when you felt the department's funding was at an optimal level?
I don't think we can necessarily point to a particular point in time, but when the opportunity to rethink our budget, and we did this under Commissioner Strauber's leadership last year, we did a really deep dive, deliberate assessment, because we knew we would be asking in the charter revision context for something durable. And so we took an extraordinary deep dive and really analyzed unit by unit within DOI what we would need without asking. We remember this is still government, so we were not asking for anything that we thought was extravagant. But we did an analysis unit by unit of what we would need to really optimize the performance of our squad, and that is where we came to that pegging of the budget idea at 0.066%. If that would be, in our collective assessment, an optimal point, I believe it would bring our budget into the something like 72 million or so, and bring our head count into the high sixes or the low sevens, inclusive of on loans from other agencies. But that would be a really optimal situation without it being asking more than we would credibly be able to ask from the city.
And how many cities, or can you name a few of them, have adopted this model of tying their DOI budgets to the city budget?
We spent a lot of time speaking with our colleagues in Chicago, who have been operating under this regimen for a very long time. Is also an extraordinarily productive and insightful office that has been very generous, with their time, and we talk to each other in the Inspector General world, that the one that comes to mind was Chicago. They've operated under this, and they were very helpful in walking us through kind of thinking how to pick the right number. Obviously, it's a charter revision, so we wanted to get this right, and I think we believe we got the a reasonable, proper number. And I'm sure we may have spoken with Los Angeles as well, but I actually don't remember that right now.
Got it. And you mentioned before, that would bring the overall headcount to high 600s, low 700s, right?
Yes.
Which would be an optimal amount. Commissioner Strauber mentioned at a prior budget hearing that the department couldn't perform proactive investigations due to headcount restrictions. Is that still the case? And is this optimal budget that you've testified to what you need to proactively stop fraud and waste? I mean, I think it's clear to everybody that we've got to make sure we stop, bad actors and bad behavior before it actually happens. So what is the status of these proactive investigations?
Yeah. So what I think the point Commissioner Strauber was making is that we have to balance our proactive work and our complaint-driven work. The 14,000 complaints that come in every year. DOI looks at them. We look at every one and make some determination whether it's something that we can refer to another city agency, whether it's something that really falls within the purview of DOI. But we do that work, obviously, every day. We are engaged in proactive investigations all the time. And so it's not necessarily an either or, but it is a balancing act. I believe that is what Commissioner Strauber was describing when she testified, and goes back to, I think, my prior comments. There is a triaging of opportunities. DOI has all sorts of opportunities to do lots of very productive, impactful work. We want our work to be as impactful as possible, and if it's a matter of doing a proactive investigation, we want to do the most impactful ones that help agencies perform better, services to be delivered more effectively by the city, and have them, again, also the psychological impact, both for city employees, that DOI is here. Our numbers are down, but we are still here, and we are still actively working with agencies on issues of corruption. But also to let the public know that DOI is still actively doing our job. Everyone every city agency is operating under constraints, but we want to pick the proactive work that is the most impactful, and I think we've been able to do that.
And just a couple more questions from my side at least for a bit. You testified about the asset forfeiture funding that you all use, which to me what was very shocking about that, for prior budget hearings, is how much you all rely on asset forfeiture funds to fund important needs of the department. And as you mentioned before, federal guidelines also emphasize that asset forfeiture funds cannot supplant any core funding from the city and for operations. They can only supplement. But it seems to me that you all have been using it for any new needs that come up, and in particular from one case where over time, obviously, those funds will diminish. So I just want to get a better sense of how much funding has the department had to utilize from the asset forfeiture funds over the years, and how much baseline OTPS funding does the department need added in the next fiscal year so you don't have to utilize asset forfeiture funds?
Give me one moment. So going back, I'll just give you a sampling of some years. Going back to fiscal year 23, our forfeiture spend, and it's a combination of Department of Justice, Department of Treasury, and state forfeiture. Our forfeiture spend in fiscal year 23 was $1.37 million. In 24, that rose to $3.62 million. In fiscal year '25, we were, our expenditure was $6.9 million, $6.97 million. In '26, our obligations, our current obligations, for which we have dedicated forfeiture, is $7.3 million, and we believe we have about another our forecast would be that should rise to $9.9 million, or another $2.6 million additionally in 2026 in order to fund our operations. So, to your question, is what we would need from city tax levy to fill that gap. Those are essentially the numbers.
So, Commissioner, can I just pause on that for a minute? So, from FY23, 1.37 million drawn from forfeiture, and then FY26, currently 7.3 million, but likely ending up at about 9.9 million by the end. So 1.3 to 9.9, so $8.6 million increase over the last several years in drawing down on the asset forfeiture funds. Is that right?
Correct.
And that's obviously results of the budget declining, and you all needing to pull that money from somewhere.
Yes.
To be able to, is it to sustain operations, or is it for new needs as well?
It is. I would, and I can check with my colleagues. I would categorize it as sustaining operations in the sense. I mean, I'll give you just one example. Our case management system. DOI had a antiquated case management system which was not able to function properly or adequately for the internal needs with the changes in discovery law that we saw over the last few years, and I think other agencies have dealt with as well. We needed a system that would allow us to be able to manage internal data in a way that would allow us to both be to be more productive internally, but also to be able to comply with state the compliance of discovery. And so we use forfeiture for that. It's both a new need, but I would consider that kind of more of an internal maintenance. We're not looking for something in addition to what we had. We were replacing something that was old and not working with something that was new and and modern and more effective in our for our internal needs. But it wasn't, it was an internal maintenance need.
Right. It was new needs, but to sustain core operations.
Correct, yes.
Right. Have other cities, Department of Investigations, I mean, you all are talking to other IG offices, even law enforcement agencies, have you seen that much reliance on asset forfeiture funds to fund that level of, new needs, but to sustain core operations?
I don't know specifically the answer to that. It's something we would certainly be able to find out and get back to the committee on. My suspicion is, New York is unique, and the reason why we have the forfeiture funds we have would largely emanate from the city time case, which was a long time ago. But was only released within several years ago. But for that particular case, we would not have the forfeiture that we have. So it's possible that other cities have similar forfeiture experiences, but unless there is a case like that. So I would largely think the answer would be no, but I could certainly confirm that and get back to the council.
And my final question is just, you mentioned the city time case. That was where a lot of the asset forfeiture funds are coming from. Yep. How much is left in that fund? And at the rate you all are drawing down, when would that fund be depleted?
So at our current rate of spend, sorry? I can hear you. Oh, at the current rate of spend, we would we would deplete that reserve in 2 to 4 years.
2 to 4 years.
Correct, yes.
And how much is left in that fund, and what's the?
So DOI received 32 million from that, and there's 20 million left. And what year did we receive that? So we received that in 2022, that 32 million. That is now in the current year 20 million. But as you can see by the rate of spend, it's simply not sustainable.
And lastly, if you all did tie your agency's budget to the city budget, or saw an increase in the agency budget in other ways, you would not need to draw down at that asset forfeiture fund at that rate, right?
Correct. And not at that rate. I mean, forfeiture funds need to be spent. They can't be squirreled away. And so there is an obligation to spend them, but this is unusual. So yes, if we were to receive the adequate funding, that rate of spend would change dramatically.
Thank you. I'm going to turn over now to our finance chair to ask questions.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So a really quick question on just the chief savings officers, because I know every agency is being asked to do this. Have you identified someone actually within the agency to be the chief savings officer?
We have a wonderful chief savings officer. She is here today. Deputy Commissioner Caitlin Simmons is our head of all things operations and heads up finance, and she is our chief savings officer.
Awesome. Nice to meet you. Well, I think the target reductions for FY26 and 27 are the same, I'm assuming, right? Which is 1.5% for FY26 and then 2.5% for FY27?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and have you identified, I know the reports are technically due Friday, but have you identified any areas in where savings can be found? And has the administration looked to decrease or eliminate any units for savings?
One moment. Do I have that? Oh, thank you. So yes, DOI has been asked to find 1.5% in savings in 2026 and 2.5 in fiscal year 27 and the out years. We have been struggling to identify areas for cuts. Again, as I said in my testimony, we are not a programmatic agency. We are people, equipment. That's really what we have, and to cut. We're already very lean. We don't have excessive spending. Any cuts will impact DOI's ability to fulfill its mission. It's just there's no getting around that. We will do everything we can to effectively perform our mission as best as possible. But any cuts will reduce our ability to do that and to determine where best to focus our remaining resources. We will continue that triaging of resources. Our three primary drivers of our budget are salaries, rent, and the 2 integrity monitorships, none of which we have the ability to cut if we wanted to.
Right. Well, that was my follow-up question. So are you subject to the vacancy reductions, and are there any positions that are exempt?
We are subject to the vacancy reduction, and the answer as to exemption is no.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councilmember Ung, do you have any questions? Going back to a few different areas to look at. Well, my first question is, going back to the asset forfeiture. You mentioned that there are statutory requirements to draw down over the funds over time. They can't just sit there. So what are the statutory timelines for that? I mean, when are you required or legally obligated to draw down at what rate? How does that work?
My understanding is there is no predetermined rate of spend that is required by DOJ, Treasury, or the state. I assume they're there to help agencies, supplement budgets. So it would be, we would want to use forfeiture to enhance the services that we deliver to the city, to work more cooperatively with, or more proactively with agencies. There's a lot we can do with forfeiture, so we would certainly be spending them, but there is no particular duration by which they have to be spent, or any rate of spend that's required. But we would certainly want to use them to enhance our oversight of city agencies.
And going back to the reports that you all issue, how many mandated and unmandated reports has the department issued in the last year? How does that compare to previous years?
One moment. I have that right here. Do you hear that? One moment. So in 2025, DOI issued 14 reports. 2 of those were mandated. Just to give you some kind of a comparison, in 2024, we did 15 reports, 5 were mandated. In 2023, we did 9, and 3 were mandated, and in 2022, we did 4. So we're averaging, in recent years, about 14, 15 reports a year.
But presumably with less staff and less resources, that's more burdensome on the existing staff to keep up that pace.
It's harder to do. We have staff who are the subject matter experts, who are finding themselves in the field more, to try to get them now to come in, sit and actually write an investigative report. It's doable. We're doing it. We will continue to do it. And we are moving resources around in order to make sure that we fulfill that obligation to the city. But absolutely correct, it is increasingly difficult to do. And I think our reports tend to be really, really impactful and really meaningful, and are designed to speak not only to policymakers but to the public, to let them know, how their city agencies that provide services to them are performing, and ways that, and we note ways that DOI improves city services. I think it's very important for the public to see that. Again, we'll keep doing it. It's going to become increasingly harder to do at that rate.
And what, to the extent you can disclose, what reports are you working on now?
So what I can share publicly is the Office of the Inspector General for the NYPD is currently working on its annual report, and we are also working on the post-act report, which this year will be focusing on the NYPD's use of facial recognition technology, which is, I think, something that's widely of interest to individuals in the public and policymakers. We're also working on our annual anti-corruption report, which will look at the auditing capabilities of city agencies. And we're also working on a report that will detail the challenges that we have in exercising independent oversight of ACS because of certain state laws that restrict our ability to access their records, as well as the restrictive manner in which the state's Office of Children and Family Services exercises its limited discretionary authority to approve our access to records. Finally, our protest response oversight unit is working on the first of their reports that they will be releasing this spring.
Thank you. And I want to go through a couple different areas that you testified to before about the work you're all doing and how the budget impacts that. So you mentioned, or we've heard a bit about the vendor integrity unit that DOI has that oversees the monitorship program, DEP projects, and vendor name checks for contracts over $250,000. What is the budget and head count for this unit? Is it fully staffed?
So yes, one moment. So the current head count of vendor integrity is 18. It's split between 3 areas. One is the Inspector General for Vendor Integrity, and who has 3 staff members here in the city, and the Inspector General manages all of the city's monitorships, of which I believe there are probably about 10 operating right now. Those include some of the big ticket items like the borough-based jail monitorship, which we are engaged in currently, the asylum seeker monitorship from the last couple of years, which was obviously a wide-ranging enterprise. We also have the Vendex unit, which runs name checks and on city vendors. We also have, and which is probably lesser known, we have 7 staff members in, I'll call it upstate New York, because I'm from Queens, so everything is upstate. But they're up in near Poughkeepsie, and they operate the watershed. So we have investigators, largely capital construction, funded by DEP, but we have an entire staff up there doing operational work to protect the watershed and the New York City drinking water, which is something that's interesting. They are largely fully staffed. We have a couple openings, but I think we're in the process of onboarding at least 1 or 2. So we're very close to being fully staffed.
And could this unit investigate and provide oversight into the varying contract costs that agencies have for similar services? What would the unit need to perform its duty, or do you feel like it's sufficiently staffed at this point?
It would be very difficult for this unit to perform that function. During the pendency of the asylum seeker monitorship, this unit worked very closely with the assigned monitor in real-time monitoring of contracts across city agencies, and actually did I think a remarkable job of communicating, contract costs, per unit costs that were by contract, by agency, so the agencies could see, we're spending more for this, and you're spending less for this, to be able to look at their contract costs. To do that on our own, we did that with KPMG as an outside monitor. For DOI to replicate that, we certainly could. It would require funding for the appropriate personnel with the appropriate training.
Mm-hmm. And you testified to this a bit before too, but for the 9/11 investigation mandate, what are the budget requests for that?
So the final budget request will be $4 to $5 million.
And for NYPD OIG, the preliminary plan includes $1.7 million and 17 positions in FY27. Is this sufficient funding to provide oversight to the NYPD? What are the challenges in hiring and retaining an inspector general for this position?
So we think the funding is appropriate. We've got to a staffing level. We had the opportunity to hire up new staff, as I said earlier, sometime mid last year. We have a terrific staff. They are well underway in their work. So I think their current staffing, given the systemic work that they're doing, is appropriate. In terms of identifying and onboarding an inspector general, we've certainly been exploring that. It's something we very much wanted to do with the new commissioner.
And when it comes to your housing investigations, I've got a particular interest in them too, as a former tenants lawyer, and looking at the ways in which DOI can play a role in ensuring that tenants have robust protections and bad landlords are held accountable, as you all are doing. The administration recently announced a $2.1 million settlement with a landlord who was responsible for terrible housing conditions. And this, I would think, would signal a larger push by the administration to hold landlords accountable. What is the staffing for squads number 3 and number 7? I know these are the squads that oversee DOB and HPD. At squad 3 and squad 7 oversees NYCHA. So what is their current staffing?
So squad 3, which oversees HPD buildings, has a staff of 16. Squad 7, which oversees NYCHA, has a staff of 51.
And how does Squad 3 play a role in investigating hazardous conditions and tenant harassment for city-funded projects?
So we have the IG for Squad 3 is a subject matter expert who has long-standing relationships with within both the Department of Buildings and Housing Preservation and Development. Is really knowledgeable about this area and very innovative in thinking about ways to use limited staff to have the most impact. They're in addition to their and I won't say it's new, but I think it's probably the best in a long time. Our relationship with the DA's offices. Both the IG and the executive staff, we're constantly in contact with our partners at the 5 DA's offices, talking about these issues and looking for opportunities to work together. Everything we do in the tenant harassment field, we share very early and often both ways with the DA's offices. It's a very cooperative and collaborative relationship that has really both brought really effective cases, but brought cases quicker. Anytime you have an allegation that a tenant is being harassed, time is of the essence. Unlike other investigations where you might give more time, that's something we want to act on very, very quickly, and the DAs have been great. That squad also responds to building collapses, fires, along with DOB staff. Anything the DOB staff is, we see on New York 1, something happening that fire and DOB are out at, DOI has staff members responding as well.
And are any squads in desperate need of additional staff or resources?
I don't know how we define desperate. Every squad has significantly fewer individuals than it did at 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. We need more staff. We are a people agency, as I've said 2 or 3 times already. We are run by people. We are lean. We don't have extravagant spending on anything beyond people, vehicles, computers, those and rent. Those are the things that we need. If we have more people, DOI can continue to do the job that the city expects it to do.
And of course, you're also moving around inspectors between squads too, right? As needs arise.
We are
investigators. Sorry.
We're certainly moving staff depending on the needs of any project. It's all hands on deck,
right,
all the time.
And when it comes to the protest settlement monitor unit, the council had pushed for in the last budget approximately $600,000 to be included to create that unit with 5 staff. Have you hired for all these positions, and do you feel that 5 positions are enough to conduct the oversight that this unit is responsible for doing?
Yes, we've hired 1 inspector general, 2 investigative attorneys, I believe that's their title, and 2 investigators. They are a remarkably experienced, highly skilled group. They've done a tremendous job to date, and I think they are adequately funded and staffed.
And how is the staffing for Squad 1 that oversees the Department of Probation's?
Squad 1's total staffing stands at 24, and that's a combination of DOI staff and on loan from staff from DOC.
Got it, okay. And recently the department referred over a case investigating the former commissioner. Can you talk a bit with public detail about, that was a referral that was made from you all over to city authorities, I believe, to the DA's office, or I may be misremembering that, or maybe not. But if you can, to the extent you can publicly disclose the substance of that referral and who it was made to.
I can't.
Are there other pending cases the department is looking into? Are there other pending cases the department is looking into? Concerning the Department of Probation? Also, if you can.
Also not something I can talk about.
To the extent you can disclose this, will there be a report on the findings that you all, from your investigations?
Whenever we do an investigation, depending on what the outcome is, one of the options is to do a report. Yes, what the outcome for anything relating to the Department of Probation, it would be too early to know what the ultimate outcome would be.
Got it. Thank you. And according to the FY25 Mayor's Management Report, the average time to complete investigation took 251 days, which is 20% and 20% increase from the 4-year average between 2021 and 2024 of 208 days. So it's gone up by about 43 days. The department target for this indicator is 180 days. Could you tell us a little bit more about what may be causing this increase?
I think everything that we have talked about today is responsible or for the source of that continued. There is no. Certainly it is manpower. Certainly it is resources. I think also when you have 180 is the goal. Not all cases fall within that being a reasonable expectation, particularly long-term investigations of high-ranking officials in city government. Those tend to skew the time frame. So I would suspect that is also the investigations that have been public over the last year and a half or two are very much not something that the 180-day kind of is even a reasonable thought about.
Sure. Well, those are all the questions we had, Commissioner. I think one of the big themes we see today is we appreciate all that DOI has done, so much and more that DOI has done with far less. But as we stated and began this hearing by commenting on, I do strongly believe that you all deserve and need the resources commensurate with the critical work that you're all doing when it comes to transparency and accountability in government. So we'll keep pushing for that on our end. And I think it's critical to see the differences in this new budget as well, given what's transpired over the last 4 years. But I want to thank you all for your work, thank the staff of DOI as well, and appreciate your leadership too.
Thank you.
Now we're going to call up public testimony. I'm now going to open up the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recordings or photography is allowed from the witness table. Members of the public may not present audio or video recordings of testimony, but may submit transcripts to the sergeant. For inclusion in the hearing record, if you wish to speak at today's hearing, which is the oversight hearing topic, the DOI's fiscal 2027 preliminary budget, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony, you can submit that for the record. Please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You can also email it as well. For in-person panelists, please come up to the table once your name has been called. I'll call our first witness and our only witness now, Ben Weinberg from Citizens Union. Okay, that's good. Great, thank you. There we go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, and congratulations on your appointment to this important committee. My name is Ben Weinberg, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at Citizens Union. We are a nonpartisan good government group working to ensure honest and accountable government, fair and open election, and a civically engaged public. We are here to urge the Council to provide increased funding in fiscal 27 for the city's ethics and anti-corruption watchdogs beyond the levels proposed in the mayor's preliminary budget. That includes both the DOI, which is the subject of today's hearing, but also the Conflicts of Interest Board, another watchdog agency that does not receive a dedicated budget oversight hearing. Both these agencies experienced cuts, hiring freezes, and attrition. We've heard a commissioner discuss that. And the mayor's preliminary budget keeps their funding more or less flat, but the need to ensure a clean and ethical government has not remained flat. If anything, it has grown in the wake of the misconduct that marked the previous administration. And these agencies played a crucial role in these investigations, and when, as was mentioned here, when pursuing sensitive matters involving City Hall, they have faced delays in authority to fill these vacancies. The former DOI commissioner has suggested in at least one interview that requests for support received limited response as investigations involving City Hall became public. And Chair, if I may, I just want to take a step back and take a look at where we are. You alluded to this earlier. We are at the other end of really one of the more kind of corrupt administrations we have seen. We at Citizens Union have published a report January of last year that took a look at the number of senior City Hall officials that were either indicted or resigned under investigation related to corruption, and found that the number of those officials was twice as much as in the 4 prior mayoral administrations combined, right? One of those mayors served 12 years. So as we, to hear from the acting DOI commissioner here about these sharp peg cuts both to the OTPS and PS is quite remarkable. If we do want to show the people of New York that we are turning the page on the corruption of the last administration, that this is a new era, how can we seriously do that if we are not turning the page on the budget policy as it relates to the main anti-corruption watchdog in our city? We really urge the council to address that. And as was mentioned here last year, the Charter Revision Commission appointed by the council recognized the risks of underfunding these agencies and recommended in its final report protected budget levels for both the DOI and the COIB. And the agency's current budget requests are much more modest than those levels, the levels that were recommended. We support the DOI's request for 17 new full-time positions to assist with investigation, background checks, and operations. And as was mentioned, even with those additions, staffing would remain well below 2020 levels. While their workload has increased, the number of complaints has increased, and the strain on their operations is reflected in the MMR. As you had mentioned, investigations are taking longer to complete, background checks are taking longer to complete. I will also mention again, we do want to raise the COIB budget, although this is not the appropriate committee, but this is kind of related to oversight and investigation, and the COIB does not receive its own budget request. Their headcount dropped from 26 in 2022 to 20 today. They do have approval to fill 2 vacancies. The proposed mayor budget also keeps their budget effectively flat at 2.86 million. This is the same level they had prior to the Adams administration, but as we know, with inflation, with the growth of city budget and personnel, that means that budget has de facto has been reduced. So we recommend restoring the COIB to at least 26 staff members and provided with adequate funding to retain experienced staff. It's a very small agency and every position matters in such an agency. Finally, this was mentioned here both by the commissioner and by you, Chair. We strongly support establishing charter-protected minimum budgets for both the DOI and the COIB, and we have testified numerous times with the Charter Commission last year and worked with them to devise some of the language around that proposal. This would ensure their independence and stability over time. And we really want to urge the council to advance these reforms. And they can be advanced either by the same commission to strengthen local democracy. It is on pause because of Mayor Adams's kind of last-minute commission. But if that commission dies one way or another, and there's legislation in Albany actually trying to prevent it from being able to put a question on ballot, then that commission will have a clear path to the ballot. And if a future commission established by Mayor Mamdani is run, then we would recommend pushing for those reforms in that commission. Thank you for the time. I know I'm my time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it, and I appreciate hearing Citizens Union's perspective on these important issues, and couldn't agree more with many of them too. So thank you for your testimony. That will conclude our budget hearing. I want to thank everyone for coming, and thank you for your testimony, and we will continue the process of negotiating this budget. Thanks, everybody. Hearing is now ended.